Oh, there it said it.
Hello, Wes.
Hey, Phil.
How are you, babe?
Good. How are you?
I've never looked better, honestly.
You do look great. How's the Botox holding up?
I don't do
On
Botox,
me.
but I do spray tanning.
No, on me. I was switching it.
You've not shown expression since you've been here.
It's so great.
It's great.
I love being here with Phillip.
Yes. So we're so excited to be here. This is our first
time
doing a video, like a YouTube podcast. We're not great at this. So if you see us starting off camera, sometimes I don't even know where the camera is. So
there's so many.
Yeah, there's so many. So thank you, everybody here, all the 70 crew that's here to help us. Thank you. Lisa, you made it. Love you. All right. Well, I'm so excited to be here. We have talked about this subject matter
2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, a long time.
And you made a good point when you said we want to make sure we get this right.
Yeah.
And I think we've nailed this one. We have, I think, the perfect guest to discuss this. Let's bring her in, get started. We're gonna introduce her. Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome to our virtual Two Bottles Deep studio, the lovely Megan.
Megan.
Hey guys.
Welcome. So good to have you.
Yeah, thank you. So excited to be here.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate this.
When you guys said first time, I kind of thought to myself, how is this sentence going to end? You know,
right.
First time doing what?
I didn't know where I was going with it either, honestly. So just rolling with it. Let me kind of talk a little bit about why Megan and I started talking to begin with. We have a mutual friend, Yale. He's wonderful for many reasons, and he's a great connector of people. And he reached out to me after one of the episodes and said, I know the perfect person for you to discuss trans issues with. And I was like, perfect, let's do this. And he said, you're going to love her. I reached out to her, and it's just been sensational. I remember after the first visit or the first talk that we had, I talked to Wes, and I'm like,
so excited.
This is going to be the one. She and her family have an amazing story, and we've got a lot to cover. I wanted to start first. I think it's important that we do this regularly, is to just talk about pronouns. So, Megan, what are your pronouns?
Phil, my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Perfect. And Wes and I, we share the same pronouns. I'm always, am I saying him, his, he, his, him?
We usually start with the singular, so he, him, his.
Okay.
He, him, his.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
All right. All right. And second, we've got a little bit of a disclaimer because I'm a little worried about something. There's a possibility we're worried because this is such a hot topic in the world. We're a little worried that we're going to say something that is not intentionally hurtful, but can come across hurtful. Maybe we'll say the wrong thing. So can I just throw it out there that this is coming from a place of love and respect, and I'm so grateful for you doing this. And maybe you could gently correct us if we do it.
And I think if you correct us, you're correcting everybody. Yeah. And this is a big learning opportunity for all of us and the listeners.
Which I greatly appreciate both of you giving the opportunity for us to have such an open, candid conversation, because I think that in a lot of ways it can be scary. It can be intimidating. It can be the type of conversation a lot of people will never embark on because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. Therefore, they feel as though they shouldn't say anything at all. And I would rather that, we educate those around us and let them know that it really isn't that scary. And that, for myself personally, I'm an open book. So there's really not much that you could say that it would offend me at this point, because I've heard pretty much all of it. And as far as questions are concerned, I've been asked multiple questions. I've asked myself all kinds of questions, and the questions that I haven't heard yet, I welcome and I appreciate, because they're things I probably haven't thought of.
I love that. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. The other thing we were going to discuss is some of the vocabulary, because I would assume that people listening, or some of our listeners, may not be as familiar with the subject matter, and we want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same playing field with some of the vocabulary.
And the first two that come to mind, the difference between cisgender and transgender.
Sure, absolutely. So, and I think it's really important to also notate before we really dive into too much is that gender is really fluid. It's also a social construct, which means that, you're born with certain organs, but the way that you identify and who you identify is could be completely separate from your body that you were born in. So a cisgender person is typically someone whose brain and body matches, their gender and their body matches. So for myself, I am a cisgender female, meaning that I was born with female body parts and my gender identifies as female. My 7-year-old daughter was born with, a male body, but identifies as female. And I also have I have an almost 11-year-old who, she identifies as cisgender as well. So there's several different terms that you can fit underneath this beautiful rainbow of which we call LGBTQ, but it's also, it can get confusing, and it shouldn't be, but at times it can get that way.
So that clears up a lot. That's a lot of education right there. What is gender dysphoria?
So gender dysphoria is something that a lot of people for a long time thought that you had to have in order to be considered transgender, meaning that you had this dysphoria with your body. And a lot of transgender people do. You wake up in the morning, you look at yourself in the mirror, you look at your body and everything else, and it horrifies you. It actually causes mental distress. And so for some transgender people have it, some transgender people don't have it. And again, this is where it can get kind of in that gray space where it doesn't fit in a single box.
So can you get rid of gender dysphoria?
You can. That's a tricky, I was like, wait, yeah. So there is definitely therapies and people that you can work with to help you work through gender dysphoria. But I think it's really important to note that no one's doing anything surgically or medically to children that are transgender. I think that's always a big, huge misconception and a misnomer is, I heard something yesterday about 12-year-olds having gender confirming surgery. And that's definitely not the case. No one's performing surgery on prepubescent, let alone children or anyone under the age of 18.
Yeah.
So these are things that typically can be solved with things like puberty blockers or hormones, once they've reached puberty and gone beyond. But as far as curing it from a very young age, this is usually done through some sort of talk therapy.
And does most gender dysphoria show up at certain age ranges, or is this something that you could realize you have gender dysphoria in your 40s? Is this generally showing up, at 2 to 4-year-olds? When does it?
Again, it's not a one size fits all. So I think that's where a lot of, unfortunately, some of the, the misunderstanding comes from, that they think that every single person that fits in a transgender box or a certain box should follow these steps and follow this journey. And it's not necessarily that way. So there's a lot of folks that I know that are transgender that have chosen not to have any sort of corrective surgery or anything along those lines because they don't need to, because they are comfortable in their body. They're comfortable with who they are. Yeah.
Very cool. What's the difference between sex and gender?
So so sex is technically the body parts that you were born with. So sex is your genitalia. So you were either born with, the new medical term is more along the lines of vulva versus vagina, and then there's a penis. So those are your sex organs. Your gender is how you identify. So you either identify as, feminine, you can identify as masculine. And again, this is where kind of that fluidity comes into play. So you have several, where, for example, I'll give you a good example. So like my transgender daughter, she identifies as female, but she's not, well, hang on, I should say she is very girly in a lot of ways, but there are things about her that don't always fit that perfect mold of what a typical female gender is supposed to look like. So they're separate in their identities because what you were born with and who you feel as though you are completely separate.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
Thank you. All right.
Good start.
We've got a good platform now.
Yeah, we do.
All right, let's jump into this. Before we get too far into the subject, I think it's important for people to kind of understand where you came from, about your relationships and your family. So first of all, where are you from originally? Tell me about growing up. How was that?
Yeah, so this blonde hair will automatically identify me as a California girl. I was born and raised here in California. I was born in Northern California. My parents divorced when I was 4, right before I turned 5. And so my mom and I, about the age of 6 or 7, moved to Southern California, and I've been here ever since. I've never lived anywhere else except for where we are now. I went through schools here in Southern California. My husband did as well. My husband and I met when we were in our early 20s. We were friends for many, many moons before we ever got together.
Really?
I set him up with many of my friends. He dated many of my friends. Hey, why not? And then, I think that for me, I liked the bad guys. I had daddy issues. So, in a lot of ways, my dad has never really been a prominent part of my life. Gosh, I really hope he watches this, because that would be amazing for him to know that, like, I'm great. I'm good. I'm totally all here. I met my husband when I was in my early 20s. We were friends. We, at a certain point, when I realized that I was ready to settle down and get married, I always knew he was the guy I would marry. He just checks all the boxes and was always so great, and sent like Thanksgiving floral bouquets to my family on Thanksgiving. Like he's a good man, you guys, like such a good guy. And so eventually, it was just, there was this random time where we were sitting on a couch and I was like, "Are you ready?" And he was like, "I've been ready. Are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready." And we had nothing had happened prior to that between he and I. And from that day forward, we've been together.
Oh, wow.
We've been married in November of this year. We'll be married 14 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So, it comes with its highs and lows for sure. I mean, marriage is a work in progress, but, we're happy and we're great and we're thriving. So I'm thrilled.
So at what point, when you were friends and setting him up with your friends, did you ever have any like, I'm going to set him up, but I really like him? Or did it just naturally come?
Works.
Did it come later, just through your friendship? You just kind of felt later.
I think at certain points throughout our friendship, there were parties that we'd be at the same time, and I would see him with girls, and I was like, "Oh, that's not going to last." Oh no,
I'll give that a week at most.
Totally, at most. Your flavor of the month. What month is it? March. Sweet.
No one likes her anyway.
Flavor for St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, no, and then I think eventually, I remember the last girl friend of mine that he dated before we actually got together, that I was like, "Oh shit, if I let this one go too far, I'm going to lose him. Like this is going to happen. And I got to really get my ducks in a row and figure out what I'm doing there." So I think it took up until that point, but I was also at that point, like in my mid 20s. So I was like, I better figure this out before it's too late, for sure.
So I know a lot of couples, when they get together and start the idea of a family, kind of have in mind what they want. I hear it all the time. When I get married, I'm going to have, 3 girls and 2 boys. We're going to grow up in Virginia. And you're like, really? Is that going to work for you? Did you, when you first got married, did y'all sit down and talk about, the plan for the family? And was it the same?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I knew that I wanted to have kids. That was not really a question. It was more a question of, how many do we want to have? Didn't care the sex, didn't care any of that. Just as long as we had healthy, happy babies, it didn't really matter. And I think that once you find out that you're pregnant and that you find out the sex of your baby, which, by the way, that's a topic for another day, but these gender reveal parties, everyone that's like, "Oh, we're going to find out the gender." I'm like, it's the sex. It's not the gender. Right. Okay. So anyways, so I think
that was a good point.
It sound weird to be like we're having a sex reveal party.
And that's what I said. I mean,
yeah. I don't know if I'd probably go to that one.
Megan, I watch those and then I still don't know what the hell they're having because I'm colorblind. I'm not joking.
She's like, "Oh my goodness."
I'm like, girl or boy? I don't know what. And then is that wrong? I don't know, but I don't watch those because I'm like, well, I won't know.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, I think that every single time that it happens, I kind of say to myself, "Oh my gosh, we still have so much work to do, right, around this area and this subset of language." And so, I think that both times, funny story, both times that I had the ultrasound to find out the sex of the baby, my husband wasn't with me. So on the very first ultrasound, when I was pregnant with my first daughter, who's now, like I said, almost 11, I was there. A girlfriend had gone with me because my husband was at work that day. And it was one of those ultrasounds where it was like, you never thought at that point in time that they were going to be like, "Do you want to find out what you're having?" So I didn't think that this was a big one. And so we went to this appointment and they're doing the ultrasound and the tech says, "I'm like 85% sure I know what you're having. Do you want to know?" And I'm like, Yeah. I mean, it's your first baby. I don't know. There are.
We'll wait and see what happens.
God bless the families that leave it as a surprise. I have too much anxiety for that. I'm not the cookie cutter person for that at all. But as soon as, they said that to me, I said, yes, I want to know. And so the ultrasound tech said, I'm 80% sure you're having a girl. And so I went out to my car. I called my husband. I said, I'm really sorry. I would have loved to have you here for this, but it didn't work out that way. And surprise, we're having a girl. And so the second time around, again, it was one of those appointments. I had just gone in for another ultrasound, and he said, I know what, first, no, actually that didn't happen that way. He did the ultrasound and he goes, oh, is that a pee? Oh, do you want to know what you're having?
You're like, I can't figure out based on context clues here, but I think you
almost. I'm like, is it huge? Why are you asking this question? So I said, I'm guessing that means that there's a penis on this. Then he said, yes. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I could write it on a little Post-it note for you if you want to take it home to your husband. And I was like, no. So, there's this sense that happens for a mom when you find out that you are having a boy, to make that phone call to your husband to say, guess what? I promised you, Philip, that I was going to cry at certain points, and this could be it. That phone call of like, I'm having your son. I'm carrying little boy. And I'm so, to hear the joy in his voice on that day of like, oh, are you serious? Like, really? Is this really happening? And I'm like, yeah, babe, I'm having your little boy. That was a really, it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful moment. And that was me after having to apologize again for being like, I'm sorry that you weren't here, but they said there was a penis on the camera and I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
So, so from there, you have all these ideas and these thoughts. You're like, oh my gosh, here we are. All we need now is a white picket fence and a golden retriever.
Right.
And we have the perfect California, one boy, one girl family. So yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's always that thought in your head of what you think it's going to be, and then sometimes what it ends up being.
All right. Before we go on, can I ask, this is going to be a disclaimer question, because when I ask about your second born, is it appropriate to use the name at birth? I'm getting nervous even asking this. Can I talk about Grayson as Grayson before Grayson transitioned to Harper? Do I say, how was Grayson as a child? And is that appropriate to ask for someone that's transitioned?
So I will say typically in the community, especially with parents and other transgender folk, it's frowned upon to talk about the name prior to transition. It's typically called the dead name, which means that who that person was and or, the identity and the gender prior to transition is no longer there. And so I think that depending on who you ask and who you talk to, I would always be respectful of who that person is now. And if they choose to open up to you and talk to you about who the person was before, and then also use the prior name, then that's really at the discretion of the person's experience and their journey. For me and for us, for my Harper, she has no issue. We still have photos all over our house of prior to transition. And so she'll be like, look how cute I was when I was a baby. And she'll say things about, who she used to be. And so in those moments and phone calls that we get still right now from the doctor's office and the dentist office of, we're calling to confirm Grayson's appointment. She's in the car for a lot of those.
She's like, I heard that.
Right, exactly. And it doesn't kill her. She's okay. But I know that we have a limited time window of how long that's going to be acceptable for.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a transition period that has to be expected, right? Because you have to, you don't go to the dentist every month. It's every 6 months. So it may take a couple times.
Totally.
Maybe some mistakes.
Yeah. And it's also, I feel very fortunate in our situation where Harper transitioned right before she started kindergarten. So when she started kindergarten, yes, she had some kids in her class that knew her prior to transition. But for the most part, she was starting her educational career, so to speak, right, with the name of who she is now, which was quite helpful.
Yeah. All right. I don't have children, so I never know how old any child is. So when they say kindergarten, it's that,
5.
5. Okay. I was like, is it
Yeah.
12? I don't know. All right. 5. So at 5. So even before that, at what point were you and your husband starting to notice maybe signs of Harper being different?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think very honestly, it started probably around 18 months. We started noticing things of the way that she was gravitating towards her sister's closet. We started noticing that when she would play dress up, she would want like the clicky shoes when she would walk around the house, and like she would be so excited. She would do this like, this face and this excitement of the shoes that lit up and made sound when she walked around the house. It started very, very early, even prior to her having the vocabulary of even knowing what was male or female. And so it started there, and then it progressed, straight on. So I remember probably around the age of 2 was when I left corporate America because I chose to stay home and wanted to be with my kids. And I took her I say her, sorry. And this is where it gets a little funky too. So I refer to her always now as her. Okay. But when I'm talking anytime prior to the age of 4 or 5, it's still he, but I'm trying to respect her pronouns of who she is now. So right around the age of 2, we went to the Santa Barbara Zoo one day, and we were sitting having lunch, and she came over and picked up my purse. I had a crossbody purse, and she put it on, and she was walking around the zoo, waving at people and talking to everyone. And the second I was like, I need my purse back, there was this innate sense of like, you took away what I felt as though now, and I look back on, like, that was her trying to say, this is my identity. And again, I want to preface that. I want to back up. I'm sorry. I want to say that just because your child chooses to carry a purse and walk around or paint their fingernails or play with baby dolls, this is not an instant, me saying this is what made me decide about my child, or this is what should make anyone, go through those decisions. This was just the very, very beginning. And for a very long time, I thought to myself, yes, I'm going to have an amazing gay son.
That was going to be my question.
We're going to do the most amazing things together. And I was so excited. Like, I thought that's where we were at. I thought that's what we were doing, which clearly turned out to be a little different. But, that was where it started out. And so it just progressed. It went through from 18 months until there were times where she would, every single time that you asked her what she wanted for Christmas or a birthday, it was, I want a wig, I want a dress, I want clicky shoes, I want a purse. And we were like, okay, I mean, yeah, sure, we'll get you these things. But like, where is this? We were behind the scenes at night. We get into bed and we pull the covers up and be like, holy shit, what are we doing? What is going on? What is happening under our roof right now?
So that was going to be my question too. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I think we had the same question.
Are you both on the same page at this point, you and your husband? So you're in bed, laying in bed, sheets up, and are you both like, we've got a gay son? And how is he dealing with this mentally versus how you are?
Yeah, I think that we are looking at this like something's happening under our roof, and we don't have the X, Y, and Z to make any decisions, or we don't have the knowledge to know really what's happening, but we know something's happening. We know that this is clearly our son that really enjoys everything all girl all the time. And so, we thought maybe it's because she has an older sister. My husband for a period of time was like, am I working too much? Like, am I just not home enough to give her that masculine, man side that she needs? And I remember at a specific point, my husband was like, I'm getting off work early. I'm coming home. I'm taking her to the mall. We're going shopping. It's going to be a daddy and son trip. We're going. And they went to the mall. And when they got there, it was, I'm going to my husband was like, all right, let's go over to the boys section. Let's get you some great clothes or whatever. And the entire time he told me, like, she was eyeing the sparkly dresses across the way. She was looking across over at the girl stuff, anything pink, purple, frilly, it didn't matter. But to be what she thought at the time to be like compliant, like this is what my dad wants to do. They came home with a whole bunch of boy clothes. And I can tell you to this day, there's probably 1 or 2 pairs of shorts that I've held on to because they're just like that reminder that still had the tags on them. I mean, those clothes never left the bag. They never left the bag.
Can you describe we've had some listener emails about, my son's gay and my husband loves him the least. And that's just gay. That's not trans, sure, not bi, not lesbian. So I know there's a lot of scenarios out there, but describe your husband. masculine guy? Was he for it when you had these conversations? I love how you say what's happening under our roof. So you're kind of looking at the big picture. Like,
Yeah,
take us
I
through
think,
your husband's
yeah.
kind of thoughts.
And I think that it's really important to include not only my husband, but I can't leave my older daughter out of this. There's an experience that happens for each one of us in this whole process. And so my older daughter, Hayden, is like, what is happening with my brother? Like this, like I could see the pain in her face too, of like, how am I supposed to explain this to my friends? Like if I have, friends come over and sleep over, like this is my little brother that's literally in, and at that point too, I think it was that, Hayden's whole, her expression changed too. A lot of the clothes in her drawers in her closet changed. And still to this day, she's not a tomboy by any means, but to get that girl to wear a dress it's a challenge. And it's me pulling it out of her to get her to do that. So my husband he's not like machismo, like super dude, but at the same time, he is a guy's guy. He is as cisgender gets. Like he's a dude. And so there was a lot of this, like, I love my kids unconditionally. I love both of them. I'm not sure what's happening. And so, I don't know, Phillip, if you want to get into this now, or if you want to keep, where you want to go with this, but there was a point where it was, Harper telling us that she was a girl. And my husband's first reaction was like, great. So where do we take her to get this blood test? Like we prick her finger and they like put blood on a slide and it's like, yep, congratulations.
We needed evidence. We needed proof, scientific proof that this was.
He is a science guy. Everything about him is science. And he wanted statistics and data and proof to say, all we need to do is put a little drop of blood on a slide and someone's like, congratulations, your kid's transgender. And we went to therapists that were like, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. That's not how this works.
What was your first thought, Megan, when Harper said that?
I'm going to be very real. And I've said this very few times because the question has come across, not a ton. I think my initial reaction was relief. I watched my child struggle for so many years. And I say so many years because those days, months, and years felt very long in the process before we had the language. And so I feel like in that moment where, she expressed to us that she was a girl, I was like, thank goodness, because, I feel for parents that have kiddos that go through puberty, go through the phase of being non-binary and not really being able to identify one way or another, knowing that they're different, knowing that their gender is on a spectrum, but not really knowing where they fall and living in that space. It's heavy. I mean, it's a lot. And so I just kind of felt myself, my shoulders kind of dropped and I took a deep breath and I felt it. And there was a great sense of relief. I won't say that it lasted long. And then all the other things start to flood your mind, right? But that instant was relief for sure.
So I was talking to some friends and patients about kind of the overall subject matter of today's podcast. And a lot, people just give kind of real guttural reaction sometimes, just their first thought. And a very common one was, well, what if it's a phase? What if this is just a thing and she's, doesn't want to be a girl anymore? And, what do you do at that point? So I'm a science person. Everything I do is based on like clinical prediction rules and all this. Is there science to justify how, when, where a child is no longer in a phase and is really experiencing either gender dysphoria or is trans? What are the guidelines for that?
So I think it's really important to note that once you do have a child that comes to you, no matter where they're at in their journey, you have a decision as a parent to make of, do I unconditionally love my child? And it's hard. That's a hard question to answer when these kinds of things come up, because any kind of judgment or any kind of critique or any kind of anything that you give back makes it conditional. And so I feel as though, if you hear from your child, this is who I am, this is where I'm at in my life, there's always going to be that risk that things could change. And so therefore, the first and foremost thing that I could say to that is, if and when that does happen, just know that in those moments and in that time when they were feeling the way that they were feeling, that you loved them unconditionally, and they will never forget that. They will never forget that their parents supported them, or their guardians or whoever's raising them supported them in those moments when they needed it the most. And if they need to figure it out as they go along, if they know that they have your love and support, it's going to make that journey that much easier. The phase part of it kills me, because the way that I look at it is, my child right now, for a lot of people, because she transitioned at the age of 4, said she's too young. She doesn't know. You're forcing these stereotypes. You're forcing all of this onto your child. Yet, if my child was prepubescent or at some point in puberty, it would be, this is a phase. There's no way that this is really what it is. There's a rage of hormones going on right now. You have no idea what's going to happen. And then if she hadn't transitioned until she was an adult, it would have been the same thing. Well, this is a joke, right? Because how did you not identify earlier in life? Why didn't you come out earlier? There's no good time for any of this to come out. There's no good time. You're always going to get judged no matter where you are.
And so you say transition. So my question is, when I think of transition, I think of surgery. I think of all the shots. I think of, I have a close family member. I now have a godson, and I am super proud, and talked to him on the way over here tonight. And I have a lot of questions too. But going back to, 3-4 years ago, my cousin's like, I'm going to love him. It's my cousin's son now. And it's just, you just have to have that love. You just have to have the patience. It's a journey, right? And it's, she called me and I said, well, I'm gay. I don't know.
Right. We know nothing about this.
I want to know, And so when you say transition, I know people are going to be like, she already had surgery.
Yeah, that's a good question.
What, take us through that. And
yeah, that's the first thing. That's a lot of the negative feedback that I get all the time. You're pumping your child full of hormones and putting them under the knife. No, actually I'm not. It's not even anything remotely close to or like that. When they're in the prepubescent stages, before they go into puberty, as we were told by multiple therapists, this is technically what they call the honeymoon period. So this is where it's just love and affirm your child, give them all of the support that they need, remind them that they're valid, they're loved, that they matter. Work with any siblings or other family members to help them understand what's happening in your family, unit, and what's taking place for your child. As a sidebar, my mom, who is, a baby boomer born in the 50s, it wasn't that she didn't love and support myself or my kids, but there was a point where we were in that gray space where Harper would go to preschool and she would wear a skirt and a headband and, sparkly shoes. And I would get a text from her midday of like, hey, I'm thinking about swinging by and picking up Grayson from preschool. What is she wearing today? And there was a certain point where I had to make that decision where I said, listen, and I was raised by a single mom. It was just me and my mom, right? Which we talked about in the beginning. And I said to her, I love you. You are my rock, my foundation, my mom, I adore you, and you're a badass. The thing I need you to know is that I have to give my own children that same kind of love and rock and support and badassness that you gave raising me as a single mom. And I need you to know that if you cannot accept whatever this is and whatever is happening right now to my child and not have an issue with what she's wearing to go pick her up from preschool, I need to cut this tie until you can either decide that you're on board or you're not, because I have no idea where this is going and I just need to support my kid. And so she called me about an hour later and she's like, you're right. I fucked up. I love this kid no matter what. And I don't care what they're wearing to school. I'm on board. So, I think that's part of the transitional piece of all of this, is that you have to be willing and accepting of wherever they're going to go during this process. And so right now there's nothing more than just gender expression. So for example, with Harper, it's hair. The only permanent thing we've had done so far is she's had her ears pierced. She had them pierced during COVID. She's very excited about that. Her hair is now halfway down her back. It's her clothes. It's, if we go somewhere for dinner, it's, can I put a little bit of lip gloss on? Those kinds of things. Once you get to, 11-ish. So right now she's 7. She just turned 7 in July. So probably around birthday 8 or 9 is when we start going in to have regular blood tests to check for hormone levels and to kind of see where she's at. If she is starting to show that she's in the beginning stages of puberty, then as a family and with therapy, we talk about that. We talk about what her options are, which are she can either go on puberty blockers, which will block her from going through her sex assigned at birth puberty, or at that point she can, which is a whole other can of worms we can talk about at another point in time. She would have to go through her sex assigned at birth puberty for a portion of time if she wants to freeze her sperm to have her own biological children at some point. Or do you start on hormones? And when does all of that happen? So there's no quick trigger decisions that are made at any given time. I know people that have been trans for an extended period, and they need to go and they themselves have lived as their authentic self. But in order to get any sort, and these are adults, even to get any sort of hormones at all, they have to go through a period of therapy and consultation for 5 or 6 months before anyone will give them anything. So nothing about this is fast. And so that's where I think the misinformation lies.
Right.
A big deal.
I remember when you and I were speaking maybe several weeks ago, and you made a comment because I was asking, I was like, how do parents know? And I don't know if this is like a scientific thing, but you talked about how that Harper was consistent, insistent, and persistent over, is it a 6-month period?
Yeah. So one of the very first therapists that we saw, and we're very fortunate to be here in Southern California, we have access to the Children's Hospital here in LA that has a gender center. And so one of the things that they told us, and this is always a really great thing, especially when you have younger transitioning persons, is to look for, are they insistent? Are they persistent? And are they consistent? And that, yes, Phillip, is over a 6-month period or longer. And so I've had many, many families and parents and children alike reach out to me to say, what am I looking for? How do I know that this isn't just a phase? How do I know that they're not going to, my kid wants to be a dog, well, great. Right. Let him dress up like a dog.
Right.
How do I know that that's not what this is? And that's why, in order to take the situation seriously, it needs to be those things over a period of 6 months or more.
So what are some examples of those 3 things that, I'm sure there were things that happened in her life that you were like, what is happening? What is she doing? Yeah. And then it makes sense now that you know what she was going through. What are some examples of that you were like, oh gosh, this should have been an eye-opening experience, but I didn't have the vocabulary or the knowledge to know?
Yeah, I think realistically, it was definitely something as early as 18 months to 2 years old where, she would put something on that was girly and it was time to go take a bath, right? And to get ready to go to bed. And we had to take those things off to go get in the bathtub. And when I tell you that my child had tantrums, the tantrums, you guys, were so violent. They were so gut-wrenching as a parent. I mean, the screams that would come out of her, the tears, the vomiting, she wanted those things because she was trying in her young toddler way to explain to us, like, you don't get it. This is who I am. And taking these clothes off makes me no longer that way. I specifically remember at a time we have a boat out in Marina Del Rey, and my husband took Harper with him to go just for the day, just the 2 of them. And her hair was, still pixie short, but she wore this headband that was like her jam. That was always her headband. And I always call Harper the mayor because she's always one that's like kissing babies and waving. She loves to talk to people and say hi. And so my husband's on the boat and Harper walks over and there's these 2 women and they are putting away their paddle boards. And my husband's on the back of the boat, saying hi. And they're like, your daughter is so cute. What a great child you have. And Harper, it was like fireworks came from her ears, out her nose, everywhere. Like they see me as are you seeing this? So we have this photo in our house that's framed of when that happened. And it was like this pivotal moment for her that like strangers get me. They get me. They know who I am. Right. So that's just, you know, kind of those little things. But as far as like, there was a specific moment that took place when this actually happened. And it was when, you know, my husband and I were like, we're going to give it one more shot. We're going to put her on a t-ball team. We're going to have her play baseball, because my husband played baseball. He's like, I'll coach the team. And this was at the age of 4. I'll coach the team. She'll be with me. We'll get it. It'll be fine. Those uniforms and the baseball hats came home, and we found the baseball hat in the trash. She refused to put that uniform on the weekends for the games. And so we made this agreement with her that if she could wear her, you know, flowered leggings and a pink tank top underneath and a headband to the game underneath of her uniform, that as soon as the game was over, she could rip it all off. And she would. I mean, you guys, she'd stand on the field, and at the game, they were like, game time. And she was like, yes. Like, everything came off. And it was at the very end of that season that she came home and said the words to me, do you know what makes me sad, Mama? And I said, what makes you sad, baby? And she said, when the boys on my team call me a boy. I'm not a boy. I'm a girl. And I was like, there it is. There it is. And she was 4. And that was when everything changed. That was, you know, 3 months before she turned 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are, I'm sure you and your husband's journey has not been exactly the same through this experience, just like any situation in a couple's life. What have you guys struggled with, and what have you like been completely on board with the whole time, or if any of that?
So we've 100% been on board with how we're raising her and how we're raising Hayden. We love unconditionally both of our girls. We support them in everything that they do. My only requirement in this house is just be kind. Don't be an asshole. That's it. That's what it comes down to. As far as us being so public and open and, you know, out there, you know, in our local area, we've been in the newspaper. We've had, you know, all kinds of things take place around here, just kind of in our local area. I started my blog. I started putting myself more out on social media, because Harper is so open and so honest and so free to talk about it. That's where we kind of go head to head once in a while. You know, my husband will say to me, is it too much? Are we putting too much out there? Is this over the top? What are we really doing here? And I had to make the decision early on. And I have conversations with my girls on the regular about how open and out there we really are, because I want to make sure that they know what's happening. They know, you know, what's going on not only in the world and where certain bills and certain laws are at as far as what it means to be transgender in other states. But I also wanted to make sure that they were okay with whatever it was that we did. And, you know, some people will say, well, they're too young. They're kids. They can't make those kinds of decisions. I think that we lack as a society in how much credit we give our youth, because they are a lot smarter, a lot more mature, and a lot more progressed than we give them credit for. And so he and I do go head to head from time to time, especially when a lot of the hate comments came in and a lot of the really negative things started to come in. He was like, is it worth it? Do you really want to keep doing this? Like, are we doing too much? And my response to that always is, if I can save one other family, if I can save one kid, if I can help educate, you know, one more person, to me, it's worth it.
You mentioned some of the emails and stuff that you get, and you and I've talked about this. I didn't realize how much hateful stuff you get. First of all, in the whole percentage, is a majority of it hateful? Is a majority of it supportive? And there's like 10% hate? Like the kind of feedback you get, how does that spread out?
I would say that the amount of love and the amount of support is overwhelming. I think that a lot of people are starting to understand and starting to see, you know, especially with us, just, you know, whatever you want to call normal, but just a normal family living their normal lives and being who they are. So I would say that overwhelmingly the love is there and the support is there. I think that sometimes, you know, as it is with most things, we get hung up on some of the negative because it impacts us differently. It hurts us. It hurts us at our core. I'm much more calloused than I was 2.5 years ago when this whole thing started. And I have to remind myself that the people that are making those kinds of comments are coming from a place of, you know, misunderstanding. Sometimes I'll say to people, halfway joking, halfway not, like, gosh, were you not hugged enough as a child? Like, this is very evident that you are angry and hurting, and there's more to this than just this one piece. So yeah, I think that the overwhelming majority definitely is love, but there's plenty of hate, plenty.
And Megan sent me several of these. I couldn't read all of them because I was getting angry just reading this stuff. Like, no matter what you believe about something or any ideas,
It's a long email.
Right. I'm like, how much time did you spend hating?
They weren't hugged
Weren't
and
you
they don't
making dinner?
work.
Right.
So
Get a job.
Jesus Christ.
But I just want, like, this is one of many that she sent. I'll read you it's 60 pages. I'll only read the first 30.
On the next hour of 2 bottles deep.
Right. It just starts with, your child will suffer a lot in his life if you cannot make him accept the truth. How about, hey, Megan, good to talk to you. You know, it's like,
wow.
And all these, they just launch right into this, like they know, who hasn't gotten caught up in social media and see something and you comment on it and then you apologize. Right. But I don't know if I've ever spent that much time hating.
Sometimes, and that's why we do this, is to bring normalcy to, I have not been around a lot of trans people, and maybe I had those questions, and you hear the people say, well, you're born this or you're born that, or they do a screenshot of a driver's license application and see there's 2 choices.
Right.
This is America.
Yeah.
And who the fuck are you to send an email like that when you have 0 experience? Pardon the French. Stuart needs to edit this out.
Settle down.
When it's about love, it's about respect, and it's not you.
Yeah.
It's not that person. I don't know that person's background. Maybe there was a traumatic experience, but it really is having a conversation. And that's why we do this, is like, maybe that person can come back and have a conversation with you, and then they can have an understanding. They may not agree, but have an understanding of it.
Yeah.
But who are they?
Right.
Who are they? And I hear this. I've heard this from family members. I've heard this, and I'm like, y'all, it's not you. You're not living that life. Why don't you love them for who they want to be?
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. I don't know why they're vested in it.
Same.
At all.
Do you respond to these? Like, for me, I know I would be 3 a.m, Red Bull vodka in the left hand, furiously.
Yeah. No, you know what? In truth, there was, in the beginning, sometimes I would find myself, going toe to toe with some people because I felt like exactly what Wes just said. Like, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, have you spent 5 minutes in my living room with my children? Do you have any idea? Because they're telling me, your older daughter, she looks so sad. She looks like she's really, like, she's hurting from all of this. And I'm like, have you spent 5 minutes with her? Like, she is a rad fucking kid, and you'd be lucky to get to spend 5 minutes with her. So, what, something that I want to ask you guys, if this is okay. Am I allowed to ask you guys a question? Okay. So, and I have, many, many gay friends who I think are, like, honestly, the most beautiful, rad humans in my life. So thank you for living your authentic selves. But I want to ask the question of, because I got the question a lot of, how do you not know that she's just a feminine boy? How do you not know that she just isn't going to grow up and be gay? And so I want to ask you, like, how did you know that you're not transgender? How do you know that you're gay? And what's the difference between living as an openly gay man versus how do you know that you're not transgender?
I'll take this.
Yeah, because it'll take me about 2 weeks to come up with an answer. He's quick.
Wes will, like, email me in 2 weeks. He's like, what I've decided to do.
Remember when you leave someone's house, you're like, oh, I should have said that. That's what I'm going through right now.
No, but I have thought about this a lot because growing up, I definitely had some feminine. I mean, I was playing with Barbies with my cousin. I would brush my mother's hair. I mean, I'm not saying that that's all feminine, but I would do things that my brothers and cousins stuff were not doing. And I knew I was different in that way. I've worn dresses as a child. We'd play dress up, and I was always like, I'll nail the female category. I got that. Y'all be the boys, And to me, that didn't seem strange or weird. It was just what I don't know if it was gender dysphoria, if it was, at that point, I didn't know what the word meant. So I never, ever thought, ever at one point thought that I was a female. It never crossed my mind. I didn't know what it was because I didn't know what gay was. I didn't know growing up in a super conservative home, not in a negative way, but just I didn't have access to gay. So I never once thought, maybe I'm a woman. I sometimes thought, when I'd see drag queens, I'd be like, that looks cool. Do that,
Yeah.
But again, it never was like I wanted to be a woman. So I think that's a very good point, Megan, is that I never ever questioned my male,
Your gender. You never question your gender.
Yeah,
never. Right?
Yeah.
There's a YouTube clip that went viral years ago, and it was this guy. He was out on the street, and he had a microphone. He had a camera guy with him. So you go up to people and you say, what do you think about, is gay a choice, or are you born that way? And most of the people that they edited in, I'm assuming, said, oh, it's a choice. And he's like, perfect. I totally understand. When did you decide to be straight?
Yeah.
And then they stopped and look up that YouTube clip. I don't even know how you would Google it, but it's the gay or straight question. They're like, oh
yeah.
And there was one person on there that was like, 7th grade, I think. No joke. There was one person, but they did a great job of showing everybody. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. I never chose. I knew I was gay in 4th grade, however old you are, 10,
20. I don't know.
In Illinois, you're probably 20 in 4th grade. But no, I was authentically me. I knew it. I hid it, but we don't have that struggle. I mean, yeah, we have struggle. We all have different struggles, right? But I always knew.
Yeah.
And I didn't play all the sports. I picked bowling because you didn't sweat and the ball came back to you. Like, I didn't want to run. Yes, it's a sport and it should be in the Olympics.
Really?
On the next episode of Two Bottle Deeps. Deeps. But yeah, I didn't play all the masculine sports. I mean, I rode dirt bikes and stuff. I just knew I was the stereotypical cisgender. Did I use that right? See, Here we go. Yeah.
Nice job, Wes. Nice job.
I just always knew I was a dude that liked dudes.
Yeah.
And there was no question in my mind. Everybody else questioned it. But we had the phase thing and all of that.
Yeah.
Too.
And that's the other part of all of it, is that there's this sexualized piece, right? Because you start talking about these kids in preschool and we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to set up little Sally and little Johnny and they're going to get married. And aren't they so cute together? And we should have a wedding for them while we're here at school. Well, guess what? Johnny doesn't like Sally. Johnny likes Steve over there in the corner, and they're going to go get married. And so that's where, when they say, that we're pushing these gender stereotypes and we're doing all these things, it's like, my gosh, you guys, think about what you're doing from early preschool age with kids and sexualizing them. So pot kettle.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think, and gender's so interesting too, because it's all about environment. If you are raised in an environment where you are presented with, you're a boy and you're presented with tractors and dirt bikes, and you're not given the opportunity to do something else. I said this to Megan last night when we were talking, and this is a little out there, but stick with me. If you could take 50 babies and put them on 50 islands, all right, stick with me. All right. And you could give all of those islands all the toys that kids could play with and all the clothing that they could play with, and you went back. Do you think that all the boys would still be playing with tractors, or would they don't have anything else to go on? So they're like, you know what? That little jumper over there looks cute. I'm going to put that one on and play with the Barbie. Like,
you're right.
I think a lot of this, we present it, not force it on the kids perhaps, but it's just nature. You're just like, you're having a boy. Here's a blue box with a tractor in it.
A tractor. Well, think of Christmas and think of birthdays. I mean, you are presented with Matchbox toy cars.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
So I'm trying to buy 50 islands. So.
Keep us all posted on how that's going. Let us know.
I'm trying to go fund
it. Follow your journey there.
Okay, so questions for you.
Yes, please.
First of all, what do you fear the most about Harper's life? What are maybe it's one fear, maybe it's several fears, and are they the same as what your husband's fears are?
So, several right now at the adolescent age where she's at, I've never told her this story, but I do want to share it because I think it's really important. In kindergarten, pre-COVID, she had this friend that was her, I mean, still to this day, 3 years later, she still talks about her. Just absolutely adored her. Loved, I mean, just worshiped the ground she walked on. They were the best of friends. They did everything together. And on their first play date, we went to their house. And so they were running around and playing, and I pulled the mom aside and I said, listen, I just want you to know ahead of time, because I'm the kid that puts my hand in the cookie jar and tells you about it. I said, my daughter's transgender. And she looked at me and said, what does that mean? And I said, well, gave her the description, explained to her, as Harper explains it, she has a girl brain and a boy body. And, this is just who she is. And I figure, I need to put the cart before the horse in a lot of these situations, because girls, when they have sleepovers and play dates and whatever, girls go to the bathroom together. They do everything together. And so I'm trying to, cut this off at the pass. And she kind of looked at me like I had two heads, but we moved on from there. And that was in October. And in November, Harper came home from school one day and said, she's leaving our school. And I don't want to use her name, and I'm not going to, but she's leaving our school. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't understand, but she's not going to school with us anymore. And so, being me, because I am we're going to hash this shit out and we're going to talk about it, I sent the mom a text and I said, I hear that you guys are leaving our school. I'm just curious, does it have anything to do with Harper being transgender? And she said, we just feel as though XYZ school that we're moving to has a more rigorous curriculum. So she never answered my question. And 2 weeks later, they were gone. And this last year, during COVID, we homeschooled. And during Valentine's Day, Harper made this little girl a Valentine's Day card. And she knows that she lives nearby. So she asked, can we go leave it in her mailbox? Can we go drop it off? And that's something for me that I fear for her entire life, is that whether it's another parent or it's another child or it's someone she's interested in or chooses to be friends with or have a relationship with at some point, that she will always have to lead with the fact of her body, not who she is. Not that she's rad and she's inquisitive and she's a fucking mayor and stands out in our sidewalk and waves and smiles and compliments people as they drive by and walk their dogs in our neighborhood, but that she has to lead with this part of her body that doesn't really matter, but it matters to others. Mm-hmm. So the older she gets, that's one of them, that she's always going to be discriminated against in some way. My other fear is for my other daughter. We've got a great network of friends right now. We have friends that we've been friends with prior to Harper's transition, that when Harper transitioned, it was like, we went from calling her Grayson, now we're calling her Harper. And this is just how it is. And kids are resilient. Kids don't care. Kids are like, cool. Do you want to go on the slide in the backyard now? Because I don't really care what that was about. Right. And so I know that other kids are okay, but I know they're not all going to be okay, because depending on who they were raised by and what they learned, hate is something that you learn. It's not something that you're born with. So those kinds of things for sure. And then also what the next steps are. My kid's young. I know people that have gone through and raised older kids, and they've gone, through the process, so to speak. We haven't yet. And so those are just things that I think about as we look ahead for her future.
Does Harper talk about things she's fearful of?
I'm not in truth, I'm not sure she's afraid of anything. She is not ashamed of who she is. She is proud of who she is. Today she was in class and her teacher said, why do we not call a handyman a handyman? Why do we call them a handy person? And Harper raised her hand and said, because that's gender bias. She is very forthcoming with the information. We have given her the language and the vocabulary and the confidence to, stand up for herself. She doesn't really ever talk about any fears at all. I don't know that will change. I'm sure it will at some point, but for now, every question she has, we try to find the answer for. We may not have it right away, but we definitely look for it. I think Kelly, my husband, his fears are, very similar. I don't think that there's really much as a parent that your fears could be much different from, how path and her future looks.
And is Hayden protective of Harper? Is Harper protective of Hayden? Like, how does that relationship, has it changed a lot? I know that when Harper was younger, they're probably not the best relationship just because she was young and learning to speak and all that. But
get out of my closet. Yeah.
Right. At this point, is Hayden more protective because of what Harper's gone through?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. Hayden wants to do now what, I take that back. Hayden is much more of a voyeur. She's an observer. She's somebody that really likes to take in the whole room and the whole situation and really try and understand it in any way that she can. She doesn't speak much about things, but this year in her classroom, she's taken it upon herself now in 5th grade to educate her class on the fact of what it means to be transgender, what it's all about. And, it was one of those things, we were driving to school the next day after she had done this. And she was like, oh, by the way. And I was like, that is not a, by the way, that is a huge milestone. That's a big deal that you felt that way, to speak up and speak out for your sister. They definitely argue like sisters. They definitely fight like sisters. Hayden already is very non-affectionate. That's just who she is and how she is. And we've had conversations around that it's been more difficult since Harper transitioned because she feels like that was her brother. That's kind of weird. She's still in her own transition, in her own space.
Can I ask you about therapy?
Yeah.
Is it a family thing? Do you divide up? How does that look?
So in the beginning, it was very much, we went to, us trying to, and my husband trying to get the best of the best. Let's go to the best therapist. Where can we find the best therapist and what this all, and we went to one and she was lovely. And she gave us some really great advice. From there, we put both girls in play therapy because Harper was still so young. We wanted her to be able to kind of understand and figure some things out through play, and also that for Hayden. And at that time, they were the only ones seeing the play therapist. And yet, after every few sessions, they would bring myself and my husband in to kind of talk about, hey, this is where we're at, and this is what we have going on. And it was heartbreaking when we had our very first sit down with her, and she said, the biggest realization that I've had is that Hayden feels like this is her fault. She feels like that because Harper has had access to all of her girl things and her girl stuff, that she turned her this way. And that's, another way to chalk up so much of the misinformation that this is such an innocent situation where, this child feels responsible for what happened with their sibling. And, thankfully through her, which was something Hayden had never said to us. So thankfully through her, she was able to explain that this is not something that's contagious. It's not something that you can catch or that you can, create. So yeah, we did some family therapy, individual therapy. And, once we realized how confident both girls were, we were like, we're just going to hold off until we need to, until they ask us. And they know it's an open door. If they want to go back, we totally can.
That's another question I was thinking that someone mentioned when I talked about this episode was, what if they change their mind? So what is your answer to someone if they come up to you and say, what if Harper changes her mind? What you going to do now?
She changes her mind. I love her unconditionally. We'd obviously have a discussion around how she came to that and what made her decide that. I do remember at one point, a few months after she had initially transitioned, she said, you know what, maybe I should just go back to being a boy. And I said, well, where's that coming from? And she said, maybe it's just easier for everyone else. She was 5 when she said that at the time. So she's a wise, she's a wise human. She's very smart. And she does not want this to be negative for anyone else. And so she's really trying hard to be like, it's not a big deal, guys. This is just who I am. But maybe this is easier for you. This is who I am, but I also don't, I don't want to be that way for you, So she went through that, but we talked about, if this is who you are, and that's always how I've said it. Like, we know this is who you, it's like, if this is who you are, be proud in who you are, because we're proud of you. So yeah, if she came to us, especially, my next thought is things could change when she goes into puberty. Maybe she goes through a phase of being non-binary. Maybe she's confused for a period where she's like, I'm not really sure And at that point, you just love and support, you affirm whatever you need. Do you want to go to therapy? Do you want to see somebody? How can I help you? How can I support you in your journey? That's just what you do.
That's like I may mess this up, but it's nature.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, I was told I was a phase and that I was wrong. And again, not trying to take anything away from trans, but there were some similarities when you said that. It's like, yeah, and maybe I will fall in love with a girl, but I don't know. But this is nature. And I saw a speaker once, and he's like, when we become adults, we're dicks. Like, we stop playing, I mean, everything is like, so, okay, you're a man, you can't break, and you don't go to therapy. You're a woman, you're in the kitchen. A woman, I mean, it is this. And he actually is a world-renowned speaker, and he will take a ball and he will get people at Google and Amazon to go outside and play tag and dodgeball, and they come back in, they're productive. And he's like, we stop playing. We stop, we get into this adult, and you have to be this, and you were born this way, and you can't do this, rather than nature. Let's love each other and let nature take its course.
That's a good point.
I know gay women who are now married to men. They're like, I'm in love with this guy. And I don't know if that was a phase. I might still be bi, but I'm in love with this guy.
Yeah.
And they've been married for 20 years, and she was with a woman before. It's none of my business. And I love her, and I respect her, and I support her. Like, why can't we let just nature take its course?
Yeah. And that's the fluidity of it. And that, I think that so many people feel like, especially politically or however else you want to look at it, that it's got to be fit into this binary box, this black or white. This is the only way that it can be.
Yeah.
And my whole life I felt that way because I didn't know any different, and it's only fair that that's kind of where our brains go. But when you start having conversations like this, like what we're doing right now, and we're having this discussion around, like, it doesn't need to be that way. It scares the shit out of a lot of people because this is my box. This is my black, my white. This is all I feel comfortable with. And it's like, okay, but the real world doesn't necessarily operate that way.
Yeah.
All right. So I tried to write down some questions, some kind of questions that I thought maybe people who didn't understand and or didn't agree with might ask, because I think it would be helpful for us too to know how to discuss this in a way that is pro-trans, pro-everything, the LGBT community. Because you and I have always talked about this. We don't necessarily understand it all yet, and that's why we're trying to learn.
Right.
So in no particular order. First of all, how do you introduce your daughter? Do you give the information about being trans, or do you let Harper give that information? Like, do you say anything ahead of time? Like, if you're having a party at the house, is there any need to discuss, that?
First and foremost, if I'm having a party at the house, there's photos of her pre-transition. So a lot of times, in order to kind of avoid the awkward question, it usually will be, oh, by the way, did you happen to know that we painted the walls and my kid is trans? And the house didn't come with this
kitchen color, though, Megan.
Totally right. So I think it really depends on the situation a lot. I get questions recently. When I introduce myself, I always obviously lead with my pronouns, which a lot of times people are like, "But you're married to a man. Why are you leading with your pronoun?" Like, there's this kind of like, why are you leading with your pronouns? And so therefore, I think it's really the conversation that leads itself. I always have this, and I don't know why, and I hope at some point it goes away. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But if we're ever in a pool party, girlfriend will wear a bikini, and I try 100 times over to be like, your junk's gonna fall out the side of those bottoms. Like, if they're too small, they're too tight. They need to be darker. There's this, there's that. And she's like, I don't care. Like, I'm going in the pool. I just want to swim. Can you leave me alone? And so depending on the parents that are there, I kind of lead it with, hey, and by the way, that kid over there, she's transgender. Because I don't really, and not that I think anyone's like staring at my kid's genitalia, but like, she's, she's got it and it's there. And, I just kind of, depending on the situation. But I do know that at times too, we've been like, my mom has a pool and it's a community pool. We've been there, and there was this kid that was there with us, and Harper was like, can I tell him about me? And I'm like, what are you going to tell her about you? She's like, that I'm trans. And I'm like, honey, you can tell anybody you want. Like, that is your whatever, And so we have that discussion. Is it okay for us to talk about with other people? Are you okay with us? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. Great. educate the community as she's kissing babies and waving to people.
Right. Being the mayor.
Yeah. And these
Yes,
kids,
being the mayor.
you know, and these kids, you alluded to this earlier. They don't have the hate in here. They don't have the homophobia. They don't have the racism. They don't have the transphobia. They have none of that.
Mhm.
So they
None of
say,
it.
like, all right, great. And they hold hands and they
Right.
jump in. You
Right.
know, they're going to do partner cannonballs or they're going to do everything, you know? And then it's like, but then they get home and they're like, Julie, remember
We
that
need to
little
talk
girl?
to you about
Yeah.
something.
And then they fill their kid's head full of that shit.
You be
Yeah.
careful.
Yeah.
With
Here's what
what?
happens in the bathrooms. Yeah. No, fuck these people.
And that's just
So-
and that the
Yeah.
the headlines and all the bullshit around, that people that trans women are trans women just to get into the bathroom to assault other women. It's like, is that you really think? No. Are you?
Yeah.
No, that's not. And people say, you chose this for your child, and that's always my favorite thing. Where I'm like, you think I would choose this? You think I would choose this
we
for
wanna go
anyone? Are you insane? Like,
Mhm.
wrong? No.
Or the same thing when they say, it's a choice to be gay. Like, why would I choose to go through, being called all these names and having depression and dealing
Years
with,
of darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not really
Why?
fun.
No.
No.
Didn't love
No.
that.
I'm going to do option B.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
All right. Well, you mentioned, Megan, about the bathrooms. I was trying to look at some stats on trans children, and there was a really interesting one about that 80% of trans youth students avoid bathrooms. It's not, and I don't know how that transitions to adulthood too, but like it makes sense. Like they're still dealing with, I don't know if it's shame or insecurities, but they are afraid of being found out or something in the bathroom. So it's not like they're hanging out in the bathroom, looking for other
Yeah.
students. They're
I
probably
think it
waiting for the
has-
bathroom to be empty, and they're like, okay,
Mhm.
now's my chance. Let me run in there and do this now.
Yeah, which I think is it's a huge point because for example, like at Harper's age, the concern is that you've got these little tiny humans that are trying to crawl underneath the bathroom stalls to like, haha, be funny and make jokes, and they crawl under the stall in Harper's bathroom and have a heart attack at the age of 5. Like, oh my God, that's not a and then as they get a little bit older, depending on how they present and how they look, they don't always necessarily feel comfortable going in the male or the female bathroom. I know for other trans boys or I feel so weird saying trans men when they're just still teenagers, but trans boys in high school that are going to the restroom, they don't use the urinals, and therefore every single time they go to the restroom, they're going into a stall and closing the door, which is automatically going to set off all kinds of alerts. Like, is there something wrong with your stomach, or is there a reason that you're going into that stall every time?
Right.
So I think that it's unfortunate. That's why I've worked my ass off and will continue to do so to try and make sure that from elementary, middle, and high school that there are gender neutral bathrooms on every single campus, as many as that we can make happen, because you still have kids, especially at middle school, most awkward years of your life, no matter where you are on the gender spectrum, that you may not feel comfortable going into a boy's bathroom or a girl's bathroom. On any given day, you might just be like, I want to go into a restroom that doesn't identify me as A or B and just go to the bathroom, And so that's something that I think that we need to continue to try and chip away at for bathrooms of all kinds, and not make it in the nurse's office where it's like Johnny's got to go to the nurse's office every time he goes to the bathroom.
Climb over the desk. Go.
And then he comes home with the flu every 2.5 weeks because he's going to the bathroom in the nurse's office.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really that difficult either to do just gender neutral bathrooms. It's not
easier.
I was at a restaurant
easiest
recently, and I was so I walked up and it was just like all are welcome, and all I was like, I have all these options, like all of these bathrooms, and it just wasn't. You didn't have to. I don't know. It just seemed so simple.
There's a coffee shop somewhere here in Nashville that says male or female, we don't care, just wash your effing hands. I'm like, yes, I want that. And I like privacy. I'll never forget when I went to Wrigley Field, they had troughs.
Yes.
They didn't even have the dividers. It was just this long trough full of ice so the pee didn't smell. I could not go to the bathroom in there. I'm like, I like privacy. I don't like when there's so I can't imagine the other side of it,
Yeah.
All right. Is misgendering a thing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's plenty of school districts, especially in our local area and around the country, that are in legal battles because of teachers misgendering students. Also, family members misgendering family members once they come out. And it's a real thing. It causes dysphoria. It causes anxiety, depression, all kinds of things. So when someone tells you who they are, listen.
Yeah.
When someone gives you their pronouns, and always lead with your own so that they know that they can in turn give you theirs. And if they don't, ask them what they are. I always say to my girls, never assume you know who anyone is. If someone comes to you and says, but my name is Sally, it's like, Sally, great, but my husband's name is Kelly. So you can't automatically assume their pronouns. So always ask. Always.
And I think the pronouns is something that Wes and I are just still getting comfortable with. We forget to ask sometimes because we assume sometimes. But I was listening to another podcast where they were talking about the importance of pronouns, and that it like you said, it creates this safe space for somebody to say, oh, they're doing this. Oh, I can say my pronouns, versus waiting as soon as they walk in. Pronouns. What are yours? Like we should start with ours with, hey, thanks for joining us. These are our pronouns. What are yours? And it's a little safer space. It's like a neutral bathroom.
Well, yeah, especially like right now with the age of virtual learning and remote learning, where, depending on where you are in the country, and if, you're coming out of being online full time or whatever, one of my biggest suggestions to teachers in general is, if you're going to be on Zoom and you're going to be with your entire class, it's so easy to add your pronouns into your name, your handle, so that your students that are in your class know that you're a safe space. So it's a simple way to do it.
I tried adding that on my Gmail, and I just unintentionally typed she, him, his. And so the very first email I sent out, the response was like, I'm still not sure. What do we do with that? I was like, oh, sorry, I missed that. So, all right. What about, all right, this is a little personal one.
Sure.
So, did you go through a grief period? Did you grieve the loss of having a son? I don't know if that's I'm not being disrespectful.
No.
Well, because it goes back to when you said the dead name.
Yeah.
That kind of hit me. It's like, isn't the personality the same? Is it really a lot different?
Yeah. No. Yes. In fairness, in the very, very beginning when this happened, I think that, as I told you initially, when there was this, I'm a girl and not a boy, there was this sense of relief that was felt right away. That was the initial one. And then quickly what followed with that, for a period, I'm very honest and very transparent about this. There was a period where I grieved the loss of the idea of who I thought my kid was going to be. Right. So like, I have this daughter that I know at some point is going to bring home someone, which prior to transition, I was like, I can't wait until my daughter starts bringing home boys and I get to be like, yes, for this one and no for that one, and vice versa. And then my son's going to bring home these girls and I'm going to be like, your shorts are too short. I can see your ass hanging out. You're out, whatever, what have you. Right. And so these ideas in this very stereotypical world, and I should say heteronormative world, right, where that was where I thought we were going. And so now at this point, I always say, like, I'll say to Hayden, like, whoever you end up liking, I don't care who it is, just make sure they're a kind person, right? And so that idea right away in the beginning started with this grieving the loss of the idea of who I thought my child was going to be. And then I would say for probably the last year or so, there was this epiphany, if that's what you want to call it, or realization of like, it doesn't matter the gender or the sex of my child. The human being that I gave birth to is still the same human being I gave birth to. Yeah. And therefore, any ideas or preconceived notions of who I thought they were going to be, they're going to be their own human no matter what. So if anything, it was like a good shock to my own system. Like, don't put the cart before the horse. I've said that before throughout when we were talking before. Like, in some cases, I do put the cart before the horse, but it reminds us not to, because this is their path, their journey, their life. We have our own, right? And so we, as parents, can guide them and nurture them and love them and give them whatever they need, but we can't plan their future for them.
So do you had mentioned your vocal on Instagram or you're getting feedback, positive and negative, right? Mostly positive, which is great to hear.
Yeah.
Is that on your social media platform? Are you involved with organizations? And if you are, have you met people that have had different experiences if their son or daughter wanted to transition at 13, 14, 15? So they went through most of their school known as this, and now they're changing in junior high and high school where kids may be a little bit more,
I mean, perfect
judgmental.
example. I call him like my mentor. My very first person that I connected with right after Harper had transitioned has a transgender son, and his transgender son went to an all-girls Catholic school from the time that he was in middle school up through I think it was like 10th or 11th grade. And when this dad came to this all-girls Catholic school and said, my child is trans and is actually he, him, they said, oh, we know. We've known. Right. And so it was this like, oh, so I'm not telling you something you didn't already know. And then they pulled him out and put him into public school, and he was in choir and all these other really beautiful things. And they're a lovely, lovely, wonderful family. I mean, they saved me and gave me so much information in the very beginning. I'm very thankful for them. But I do know that there was a period for this amazing human. I won't again give his name because I want him to be able to give his own identity if he chooses to at any given point, publicly like this. But, he went through a period where he didn't know for sure, came after puberty for him, went through a phase of being non-binary, not really knowing which bucket or box he fit into. And so there's this, there's one part of how you identify, but it's also who you're attracted to. So being a trans man, for example, you can still be gay because you're technically a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so again, these are all these stigmas where people are like, but you have a vagina, you're not really a man and you're not gay. It's like, you can't, and this is clearly going to be a different topic and a different discussion, but these are all the nuances and the little things that go along with it. So they went through their own journey and they went through their own process, and it was not as black and white. And that's why I say, I feel like for us, we're so lucky that our kid came out so early and, told us who she is, because I feel for those parents that go through the adolescent year or the pubescent years of all of that with everything else.
Do you have a problem with people that don't agree with you? Can you be friends with people who at their heart disagree with the way your family is living?
That's kind of a dotted line. When Harper first came out, I, went public on social media after we had told a lot of friends and family. And I basically said, listen, if you don't agree with this and you don't want to open your mind to it and you don't want to change your way of thinking, if it is narrow-minded on this topic, there's the unfriend, unfollow button. You can click it and you can leave quietly. I don't need to hear your opinions. I don't need to know how you feel. I'm supporting my child no matter what. So I don't need to hear any of that. And I remember sitting one night with my moonshine, my wine, whatever, and just watching the numbers go click, click. And I was just like, wow, this is fascinating to me to see that so many people are just like, oh my gosh, no way.
Right.
And I can tell you people that I've known for a very long time. I just recently wrote a post about this, about, Hayden's softball coach who we were with 2 years ago, every Saturday, Sunday, saw Harper. We were with them for games and practices and everything else. And they're ones that made comments about, saying 12-year-olds are having sex change operations. And I was just like, did I not leave the door wide open for you to just walk? Like, I'm not even going to make it hit you on the ass on the way out. And just get the fuck out. I don't want you here. And they still stayed through this whole time. So, yes, definitely. I mean, there have been people that have said, sent me text messages and said, you realize that your son is never going to carry a child. Like, why did you feel the need?
What is that?
Why? Just don't, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah, shut the hell up.
Just don't. So yeah, and I just, it's still evolving over time. I know there's still people that are sitting there like this the whole time, just waiting to be like, right. See, I told you so. It's gone back, and it's
one
like,
mistake, and they're jumping on you.
Yeah.
You and Kelly, it's the first time meeting, right? I have the utmost respect for y'all.
Oh, you're sweet.
Really, 52% of trans youth with supportive families. 52% have decreased in suicidal thoughts. So y'all are the difference. Y'all are the change. Y'all are the inspirations. And it's just so fucking amazing that I know you've been. And here's the thing. It's not, when people watch this, like, oh, well, easy for her. She's cool. She's rad. She's hip. They just sailed right through this. Thanks for telling us your vulnerable spots and how you had to get here. That's tough.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm far from, I tell my girls there's no such thing as perfect. And it doesn't exist, and I'm far from it. And I just know that I had to make that conscious decision, as did my husband, that we were going to love these kids no matter what, and no matter what journey they're on, and whatever. And again, like I said at the beginning of this, just don't be an asshole. Be kind. That's all I can ask from you. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And it's no, it needs to go mentioning that, a lot of marriages don't survive things like this. This is a huge, huge thing. And if you and your spouse or your partner are on complete opposite ends about this, and you are not constantly in communication, and you're not fighting about it in some way, shape, or form, you're not having the right conversations, because these are tough. These are difficult. The first year, I promise you, I cried myself to sleep more times than I can count. And it's been a process, but it doesn't mean to say where I'm at now that I'm calloused. It's just, I'm 2.5 years, coming up on 3 years now. And each time that these comments happen and that something negative takes place, it adds that extra layer of that callous, right? And so I just know that we will only continue to get stronger as a family as we go forward. And I'm here for anyone and everyone that has questions, that's coming from the right place, that just wants to know more and understand. I'm here for it.
All right. So before we finish, I'm going to put you on the spot just a minute.
Oh boy.
Let's say you had 1 minute. You're talking to a group that are anti-trans kids. They hate it. They are done. This is awful. You get a moment at the microphone. I don't know if plead your case is the right word, but what would you say to people in that mindset?
I think my first initial thought when you're asking me this, and I don't know that I would actually say this out loud, I probably would, but I would say something to the effect of, do you want to be responsible for a suicide of a child? Ask yourself that question seriously. Because every single time that you misgender, you don't affirm, you don't support, you make your love conditional for someone who is struggling with their gender identity, you are hacking away more and more at the person that they are. And at a certain point, they will feel so unworthy of your love and your acceptance that they will take their lives.
Yeah.
And you need to really ask yourself if you're okay with that.
You nailed that one.
Hour.
Yeah. So I echo Wes with this. I think you're freaking amazing. I've never met you in person, but I feel like
we're going to LA tomorrow.
We're going for sure.
Can I come to Tennessee? I'd love a break from my kids.
Can I
come there? Okay.
Yes, come. I just want you to know, first of all, Harper is amazing. What I kept getting during this whole thing was it makes me, I wish I was so liberated and free the way you describe her, the way that she approaches the world. I didn't get this until I was 40 something. Like, we had an episode about how I finally realized I don't have to make other people comfortable around me. It's not my job. She's at this
Harper's
so early. She's nailing life. Like, I'm a little jealous at the way she's just like been the mayor. It took me a while to get the mayor, but I admire her so much.
Yeah.
And for you, Megan, for you and Kelly, it's just a very special family that you have. The fact that you have worked so hard to try to educate the world of your school district, the way you love your family, the way you kind of meet hate with education and love. I think that is exactly the type of person we all need to be. So I want to tell you that I'm so grateful for Yale for making this happen. And I'm so grateful for your honesty and your vulnerability. I love you. I love your family, and I cannot wait to meet you guys. I hope I'm expecting a ticket.
Oh. It took me like 8 episodes to tell Philip I love him.
Yeah. Oh, you love him in one?
In one. Megan, I love you, Megan. It does. Oh my God. This is amazing.
All right. Well, look, I appreciate you. I hope we can have you on. I hope to follow your journey with your family. If we have more questions about this, I'm hopeful that you'll let us reach out to you.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah. Anytime. Yeah, so, I love you guys so much, and I really appreciate the conversation and the opportunity to have the conversation so that we may reach some of these people that are on the fence, or one leg on each side. Let's bring them to the happy side where there's puppies and unicorns, because it's a much prettier, much brighter, beautiful place to be.
Amen. Well, thank you so much. We love you.
Love you guys,
and hope to talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you. Bye. Woo.
Good job.
That was amazing.
Girl. Guys.
Hey, that was so good. Thank you so much.
Hang on, I gotta pour more moonshine now that we're done.
I need
Can I reach through there and get that?
This is a different. This is the blood of.
Oh yeah.
What kind of
moonshine?
moonshine?
The haters, y'all. Let's drink it.
I love that.
What kind of moonshine is that?
This is a cab.
Oh.
I'm normally not a cab girl, but.
Ooh. Yeah, I'll get you that.
So.
There you go.
Well, Megan, I don't want to keep more of your time. I thank you so much for spending the time with us. And I'm serious about being able to do this regularly. I think you're so good. You make it so easy to listen and learn. And you could be like our, LA correspondent for all issues related to everything.
And I apologize. I know sometimes I just start talking and I get off into a tangent and I keep going. And it's just, I sometimes do that. So you can always be like, okay.
Right.
No, that was
thank
perfect.
you, Megan. That was a wonderful hour.
It's almost like we rehearsed that.
Yeah.
It just seems so smooth.
I told you, she's so easy to talk to.
It's so rare that you just find a genuine vibe and a connection where the conversation flows, and it's really easy. And I am so thankful for you guys for that. And I do hope, maybe we find a way to put it out. Like, do we have, maybe once a month or once every other month or something, like we start lining up questions and we just go through and we talk about them. Because I think this will generate a lot of like, well, what about this? They didn't cover this, or I have a question about this, or whatever. My kid feels this way. What do you think? Like, I think this is an opportunity for great, coming from a mom who's got changed the battery pack.
I always wondered. I wondered if Philip ever ran out of battery, and this
my
God.
He spoke for too long, changed the battery pack.
Yeah, the camera just fell off.
Yeah, so I think do you guys have like a logo or something that you can send me that I can promote it on my Instagram, that like, hey, we did this, we're putting this together, and we hope at some point to maybe have some Q&A every once in a blue moon. And if you have questions,
that'd be perfect.
We do our mailbag episodes have been great. So this one, we can
do
have you on and just kind of go through it again.
Because I think sometimes the perspective around the block is a big.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think this one will come out. Is it 2 weeks? We've got one for next week lined up, and then so I'll let you know. But I'll send it to you the week before we figure it out. But
it'll be.
I'm super excited.
I'll let you know. I think it's the 13th.
Hey, let me introduce you to Trent real quick.
Hey, Trent.
Trent's the one that's been like running this whole thing. And
let me fix my hair.
I was turning my computer, but
hold on, battery
died.
Stupid battery. This is Trent's first time putting a cord in a battery.
Plug it in.
It was a good song there.
One of my favorites is the best part of waking up.
There's Trent.
Hi, Trent. Carolina Panthers.
Ah, go team.
It is,
She's-
go team.
All right.
So amazing.
Yeah, he's the spread the
He's
positive.
the brain
This
behind
whole wall
this.
says STP. You can get that in there?
Yeah, sure. I can take.
Or oh no, it's that.
God, I'm
we'll
stupid.
pan the camera around, but
Oh.
yeah, it's a whole setup here. Spread the positive. A lot of great podcasts on the
Yeah.
platform.
All right, hon. I'll let you go. I'll text you here in a little bit. Oh yeah. Oh, let's get
Everybody
one for you.
wave, because I'm gonna take a photo.
Where do we
And
look?
how do I
Oh
do
yeah, it's up there.
Like this, or where do I look?
Are we seeing you? Yeah.
What is happening with my hand? What is this?
What is that? Do you have a claw
Right.
hand? Hold on. Let's do
Oh
it.
my god!
hand.
Wait, no, look. What is this?
What are you doing? That was a good picture. Hey, I want to
love
get
it.
one of you
Oh,
of us
yeah.
as well because I want to send this to Yale.
All
right.
Oh, my jaw just popped. What was
I
that?
heard that.
Hear that? Yeah, that's what that was.
All right, we ready?
Yep. I'm not doing my hand again though.
All right, gotcha. Thank you, babe.
Love you guys.
I love you.
Love you. See you later.
Have a good one, and we will talk soon.
All right, bye.
Bye, boo.
What do I do? Just like click out?
I think